Welcome to Mr. Hutchings History, where the past comes alive. Let's dive into today's story.
Hey everyone, ready for another deep dive?
Always.
Okay, so today we're going to be talking about the Montgomery Bus Boycott.
Ooh,
And, I think we all know the Rosa Parks story,
of course, yeah.
but we're really going to be looking beyond that familiar story today at the lasting impact
Yeah.
of the boycott. And I think it's going to be really interesting to sort of uncover just how much planning went into it.
Right.
And, the kind of community effort that was involved.
Yeah, it's really fascinating.
And, 381 days.
Wow.
That's how long the boycott lasted.
That's incredible.
It wasn't just about the buses, though, right? I mean,
No, absolutely not.
it really reveals a lot about Black economic influence.
Yeah.
And really sparked a national movement.
It did.
So I'm really excited to dive into all this with you.
Me too.
So, we all remember hearing about Rosa Parks refusing to give up her seat on that December day in 1955.
Right.
But that wasn't just like a spontaneous thing,
Oh.
right? It was a planned action. It was built on years of organizing
Yeah.
by groups like the Women's Political Council.
Exactly. That's a really important point. They were already strategizing and mobilizing the community
Wow.
for change.
Years before that.
Yeah. Think about Joanne Robinson,
Oh, yeah.
a professor and activist
Uh-huh.
who played a pivotal role.
Okay.
The night Parks was arrested,
Yeah.
she stayed up all night mimeographing thousands of leaflets,
Oh, my God.
calling for a boycott.
That's incredible.
Right.
So this wasn't just like a spur-of-the-moment reaction to one incident.
No, it was a strategy.
It was a carefully considered strategy.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And the boycott's duration,
Yeah.
those 381 days, I mean, that is unprecedented.
Wow.
Many other cities had attempted bus boycotts before,
Right.
but they typically fizzled out after a few days or weeks.
So what was it about Montgomery that made them able to stay with it for so long?
I think it speaks volumes about their unity
Yeah.
and their resilience.
Yeah. I mean, think about it. Walking miles to work, carpooling, organizing alternative transportation systems. I mean,
Yeah.
it must have been incredibly challenging.
Right.
But there's this powerful quote from Claudette Colvin,
Oh, yeah. Claudette Colvin.
another young woman who had refused to give up her seat on a Montgomery bus
Right. Yeah.
months before Parks.
Wow.
And she said, and I love this quote, she said, "Our leaders is just we ourselves."
I love that.
Right.
That's amazing.
This wasn't about following a single charismatic leader.
Right.
It was about a community recognizing its collective power and taking ownership of the movement.
Wow. And I think that quote just, it really highlights that shift towards community-driven resistance,
Yeah,
which is so powerful.
it is.
And, it also makes me think about the economic impact of the boycott.
Right.
I mean, the bus system relied heavily on Black riders.
You did.
So when they refused to ride,
Yeah.
it must have had a huge impact.
Oh, a major hit. They lost an estimated $1 million in revenue.
$1 million.
$1 million.
Wow, that's huge.
And it wasn't just the buses.
Right.
White-owned businesses that depended on Black shoppers.
Yeah.
They felt the pinch, too.
So it wasn't just about changing hearts and minds.
Right.
It was about hitting them in the wallet.
Precisely.
Wow.
The boycott really demonstrated the power of economic pressure as a tool for change.
Yeah.
And that was a strategy that would be echoed in future movements.
For sure.
Now, of course, we can't talk about the Montgomery Bus Boycott without mentioning a young pastor who had recently arrived in the city, Martin Luther King Jr.
So King, right, his church became like a central meeting place.
It did.
For the movement.
It did.
Yeah.
And his powerful oratory skills
Right.
played a huge role in galvanizing the community.
Yeah, for sure.
But what's truly remarkable is that King, at this point, was just a 26-year-old pastor.
Wow.
Yes, who had just finished his doctorate.
Okay.
He had no experience
Wow.
leading a movement of this scale.
So how did he rise to prominence so quickly?
Well, his charisma and eloquence certainly played a part.
Yeah.
But what truly resonated with the community was his unwavering commitment to nonviolent resistance.
Right.
A philosophy inspired by Mahatma Gandhi.
Okay.
He recognized that meeting violence with violence would only escalate the situation. Instead, he advocated for peaceful protests, boycotts, and civil disobedience.
Yeah.
A strategy that proved incredibly effective.
So it wasn't just that he was a charismatic speaker.
Right.
He was also a strategic thinker.
Absolutely.
Who was shaping the direction of the movement.
Exactly. And it's important to remember that this movement faced intense opposition.
Yeah.
This wasn't a peaceful transition.
Yeah.
We're talking about the Jim Crow South.
Right.
Where white supremacy was deeply ingrained.
Of course, yeah.
Groups like the White Citizens Council and the Ku Klux Klan.
Ugh. Yeah, those names send chills down my spine. I know the KKK was known for its violence and intimidation tactics, but what exactly was the White Citizens Council?
Well, they were sort of the more respectable face of white supremacy, often made up of business leaders, politicians, and other prominent figures. They used economic and political pressure to maintain segregation, opposing integration efforts, and supporting segregationist candidates.
So it was like a two-pronged attack.
Yeah.
You got the violent intimidation from groups like the KKK.
Right.
And then this more subtle but equally insidious pressure.
Absolutely.
From the White Citizens Council.
Exactly.
So how did the Black community hold up under all that pressure?
It's truly remarkable.
Yeah.
They faced harassment, bombings, threats, but their spirit didn't break.
It's incredible.
There's this incredibly poignant anecdote that captures their resilience.
I'd love to hear it.
After the Supreme Court ruled against bus segregation in the Browder v. Gayle case. We'll talk more about that later. The KKK decided to parade through Montgomery's Black neighborhoods.
Oh, no.
As a show of force.
Wow.
They were trying to intimidate residents and reassert their dominance.
Oh, my gosh.
So what do you think the residents did?
I don't know. Did they cower in fear?
Nope. No, not at all.
They
came out of their homes and waved at the motorcade. They even offered them refreshments.
Oh, my God.
It was this powerful display of defiance.
Wow.
A sign that the boycott had strengthened their resolve in the face of this hate.
Yeah.
They had won a major victory and they refused to be intimidated.
That's incredible. Talk about turning the tables.
Right.
Yeah.
So you mentioned the Browder v. Gayle case.
Yes.
Was that the legal battle that finally ended bus segregation?
Yeah, was that it?
It was this lawsuit filed by the Montgomery Improvement Association, challenged the very constitutionality of bus segregation.
Wow.
But before we delve into that,
I
think it's important to acknowledge that the Black community wasn't alone in this fight.
That's right.
There were also white allies who recognized the injustice of segregation and actively supported the boycott.
Like Reverend Robert Graetz, Lutheran minister who served a Black congregation.
Exactly.
His story is so inspiring. He faced intense backlash.
He did.
For supporting the boycott. I mean, his home was even bombed.
It was.
But he never wavered in his commitment to justice.
Right.
It's incredible.
His story is crucial.
Yeah.
It reminds us that even within a system built on racial division, there were individuals who recognized the humanity of their Black neighbors and chose to stand with them, even at great personal risk.
It's so powerful.
It is.
Okay, so we've got this community boycott, economic pressure, the rise of MLK as a leader, the incredible resilience of the Black community, and even white allies joining the fight.
Yes.
And in the midst of all this, we have this pivotal legal battle.
Right.
The Browder v. Gayle case.
Yes.
This is where things get really interesting.
Right? This is where the legal strategy comes into play.
Yeah.
And it's a fascinating story of how direct action and legal battles can work hand in hand to create lasting change.
Yeah.
But I think we've covered a lot of ground already.
Okay.
Maybe we should pause here.
Okay. All right.
And pick up the legal battle in our next part.
Oh, you're killing me. But okay, you've got me on the edge of my seat.
I know, I know.
I can't wait to hear how that legal battle played out.
All right, we'll get to that.
I'm sure you have some fascinating insights to share.
I do.
Okay, we'll be back in a moment.
All right.
To dive into the legal battle of the Montgomery Bus Boycott.
It's going to be good.
Okay, so before the break, we were talking about the legal battle that was brewing during the Montgomery Bus Boycott.
Yeah, and I'm ready to dive into that Browder v. Gayle case.
Me too. Sounds like this is a pretty pivotal moment, right?
Absolutely. This case challenged the constitutionality of bus segregation head-on.
Okay.
You see, the boycott itself put immense pressure on the city.
Yeah.
But it was this legal fight that had the potential to create lasting nationwide change.
So can you walk me through how the case actually unfolded?
Sure.
Like, who were the key players? What were the main arguments?
Okay, so the case was filed by Fred Gray,
Okay.
a young Black attorney who would go on to become a very prominent figure in the civil rights movement.
Oh.
He represented Aurelia Browder, along with 3 other Black women,
Okay.
all of whom had experienced discrimination on Montgomery's buses.
So it was a direct challenge based on the personal experiences of these 4 women.
Exactly. Their experiences illustrated the daily indignities and injustices faced by Black riders.
That's powerful.
The main argument was that bus segregation violated the 14th Amendment's Equal Protection Clause.
Oh, the Equal Protection Clause.
Yes.
That's one that says everyone's entitled to equal protection under the law.
You got it.
Okay.
Gray argued that separate but equal,
Right.
the legal doctrine that had been used to justify segregation was inherently unequal when it came to public transportation.
Right.
You know, he argued that segregated buses were not only humiliating, but also created these practical difficulties for Black riders.
Right. So it wasn't just about the principle of equality.
Right.
It was about these tangible ways that segregation impacted people's lives.
Absolutely. And the case wasn't just confined to the local courts.
Oh, really?
It went all the way up to the Supreme Court.
Wow, the Supreme Court, that must have been a huge deal for the movement.
It was. Think about it. Just a few years earlier, in the Brown v. Board of Education case, the Supreme Court had ruled that segregation in public schools was unconstitutional.
Right.
Right. So there was this sense of momentum building.
So the Brown v. Board of Education case set a precedent that could potentially be applied to bus segregation.
Exactly.
Wow.
And in June of 1956, a 3-judge panel in the Browder v. Gayle case ruled that Montgomery's bus segregation laws were unconstitutional.
So they won.
Well, kind of. The city appealed the ruling.
Of course they did.
Delaying the implementation of desegregation.
Oh, I bet that was frustrating. So close yet so far.
It was. So the case went all the way up to the Supreme Court.
Okay.
Which ultimately upheld the lower court's ruling in December of 1956.
So they won.
They won. It was a major victory for the boycott.
Yeah.
And for the broader civil rights movement.
Yeah.
It affirmed that segregation in public transportation was illegal.
Wow.
Paving the way for similar challenges across the South.
So it was like a legal 1-2 punch.
You could say that.
Brown v. Board of Education laid the groundwork.
Yeah.
And then Browder v. Gayle delivered the knockout blow, at least when it came to bus segregation.
At least when it came to bus segregation, exactly. And it's important to remember that this legal victory didn't happen in a vacuum.
Right.
The ongoing boycott, the economic pressure that it created, and the national attention that it garnered all played a role in putting pressure on the courts to rule in favor of desegregation.
So that's a key point. The legal battle was just one aspect of a multifaceted strategy.
It was.
Right. It was the boycott itself, the community organizing, the media coverage, the rise of MLK as a national figure.
Yeah.
It all worked together.
It did.
To create the conditions for change.
Exactly. It's a testament to the power of a multi-pronged approach.
Right.
They were fighting on multiple fronts.
Yeah.
In the streets, in the courts, and in the court of public opinion.
Speaking of public opinion, I'm curious about how different historical perspectives have shaped our understanding of the boycott. You know, you mentioned something earlier about traditionalists and revisionists and social historians.
Yeah, it's important to remember that history is not just a set of facts.
It's not.
No, it's also about interpretation.
Okay.
Different schools of thought emphasize different aspects of historical events.
Right.
Leading to varying interpretations.
Okay, so let's break it down. What are these different perspectives?
Well, a traditional view often focuses on the role of leadership, particularly MLK's pivotal influence.
Right.
This perspective highlights his charisma, his oratory skills, and his commitment to nonviolence as key factors in the boycott's success.
I mean, that makes sense. He's become such an iconic figure.
He has.
But it sounds like there's more to the story.
Right. Revisionist historians have challenged this top-down narrative, arguing that it overlooks the crucial role of grassroots activism. They emphasize the collective effort, the everyday sacrifices, the community organizing that made the boycott possible.
So it's not just about the charismatic leader. It's about the people on the ground.
It is.
Who made it all happen.
Exactly. And then we have social historians. who delve even deeper into the social and cultural context of the boycott.
Right.
They examine the role of local organizations, churches, women's groups, community centers.
So they're looking at the boycott as a product of its time.
Yes.
Shaped by the specific social and cultural forces at play in Montgomery.
Precisely. They might explore, for example, the long tradition of Black churches as centers of community organizing, or the role of women's groups in mobilizing support for the boycott.
That's fascinating.
And then there's critical race theory, which we touched on earlier.
Oh, yeah. Critical race theory. How does that lens shape our understanding of the boycott?
Well, critical race theory encourages us to examine the boycott through the lens of systemic racism. It asks us to consider how deeply ingrained prejudice and discrimination shaped the context in which the boycott occurred.
Right.
For example, it might analyze how white economic interests were threatened by the boycott, or how the legal system was used to maintain segregation for decades.
Right. That's a really important perspective.
It is.
It helps us understand the boycott not just as an isolated event, but as part of this larger struggle against systemic racism.
Exactly.
So we've got these different perspectives on the boycott.
We do.
Which one is right?
Well, that's the thing about history. It's not about finding the one right answer.
It's not.
No, it's about recognizing the complexity of the past.
Okay.
And acknowledging the multiple perspectives that shape our understanding of events.
It's like we're piecing together a puzzle.
It is.
Right. Each perspective adds another piece.
Yeah.
Helping us see the bigger picture.
That's a great analogy.
And it's important to remember that the Montgomery Bus Boycott wasn't just a local event. It had these ripple effects that spread throughout the South and beyond.
It did.
So the boycott was like a catalyst.
Yeah.
A spark that ignited a much larger movement.
Exactly. Boycotts erupted in over 20 southern cities.
Wow.
All inspired by the courage and success witnessed in Montgomery.
Wow.
But the impact went beyond transportation.
Yeah.
It galvanized the entire civil rights movement.
Okay.
Inspiring activists to challenge segregation in schools, restaurants, voting booths.
Wow.
Every aspect of American life.
It's incredible to think about the ripple effect of this one event.
It is.
And it's not just about the South either.
Right.
The Montgomery Bus Boycott resonated globally.
It did.
Inspiring movements for social justice and equality around the world.
Around the world.
So it wasn't just an American story.
No.
It was a human story.
It was.
A story of courage, resilience, and the pursuit of equality.
Exactly. The image of Rosa Parks refusing to give up her seat became a powerful symbol of resistance.
It did.
A testament to the idea that even seemingly small acts of defiance can ignite transformative change.
That's so powerful.
It is.
It's a reminder that history is not just a collection of dusty facts and dates.
It's not.
It's a living, breathing force that shapes our present and our future.
Absolutely.
And it's full of these inspiring stories like the Montgomery Bus Boycott.
Right.
Stories that remind us that ordinary people, united in a common purpose, can challenge even the most deeply entrenched systems of oppression.
They can.
Okay, you've given us so much to think about already.
We have.
We've covered the planning of the boycott, the incredible resilience of the community, the economic impact, the legal battle, the rise of MLK, and these different perspectives on the boycott's significance.
Yeah.
Where do we go from here?
Well, I think it's important to consider how the lessons of the boycott can be applied today.
Yeah.
What can we learn from their strategic use of nonviolent resistance?
Right.
How can we harness the power of collective action and economic pressure to create change in our own communities?
That's a great point. We can't just study history.
Right.
We need to learn from it.
We do.
But before we get into that, I think it's worth taking a moment to explore some of the lesser-known aspects of the boycott.
Yeah.
The stories that often get overshadowed by the dominant narratives.
Did you know, for example, that the boycott involved a sophisticated carpooling system?
Oh, really?
Yeah, that functioned like a mini bus company.
Wow.
Complete with designated routes and pickup points.
That's fascinating. I never knew that.
It was very organized.
I'm always amazed by the details that get left out of the textbook versions of history.
Right.
What else have we missed?
Well, there's the story of the Club from Nowhere.
Okay.
A group of Black women who raised money for the boycott by baking and selling cakes and pies.
Wow.
They called themselves the Club from Nowhere because they didn't want to reveal their identities.
Oh, good.
For fear of reprisals. Wow.
It's a testament to the creativity and resourcefulness of the community.
Those are the kind of stories that really bring history to life.
They do.
You know, they remind us that behind the big events and the famous names, there were countless ordinary people
Yes.
who played a role in shaping the course of history.
Absolutely. They're the unsung heroes.
And it makes you wonder what other stories are out there waiting to be uncovered,
Right.
waiting to inspire us with their courage and resilience.
That's the beauty of history, isn't it? It's an ongoing exploration.
It is.
A constant process of discovery.
Yeah.
And the more we learn about the past, the more we understand ourselves and the world we live in today.
Okay, so we've explored the Montgomery Bus Boycott from multiple angles.
We have.
Uncovering the strategies, the
Yeah.
sacrifices, the
Yeah.
ripple effects
Mm-hmm.
that continue to this day.
They do.
I have to say, this deep dive has been eye-opening for me.
It's amazing, isn't it? I feel like I've gained a whole new appreciation for this pivotal moment in history.
Me too. It's a story that never gets old.
So as we wrap up, what's the one key takeaway you want our listeners to walk away with?
I think it's this. The Montgomery Bus Boycott reminds us that even in the face of seemingly insurmountable obstacles, change is possible.
Yeah.
When people unite and demand justice.
That's powerful.
It's a story of courage, resilience, and the transformative power of collective action.
Beautifully said. And, you know, it makes me think,
That's that.
what are the Montgomery Bus boycotts of today?
Ooh, good question.
What are the injustices that we need to be paying attention to?
Yeah.
The movements that are gaining momentum, the stories that are waiting to be told.
That's right.
It's up to us to keep learning, keep questioning, and keep pushing for a more just and equitable world.
I couldn't agree more. The fight for justice is a marathon, not a sprint.
Right.
And the Montgomery Bus Boycott reminds us that every step, every act of resistance, no matter how small, contributes to the journey.
And on that note, I think it's time for us to step off the bus, so to speak.
I agree.
But before we do, I want to thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the Montgomery Bus Boycott.
Thank you for having me.
We hope you've learned something new, gained a fresh perspective, and been inspired by the courage and resilience of those who came before us.
Yes, absolutely.
And remember, history is happening all around us.
It is.
What role will you play in shaping the story?
That's the question we all need to ask ourselves.
You know, it's incredible to think about how this boycott, which started with just a few people refusing to ride the bus, ultimately led to the desegregation of public transportation across the entire South.
It really is. It's a testament to the power of collective action.
Yeah.
And the unwavering commitment of the Black community in Montgomery. I mean, they wouldn't back down.
Right.
Even in the face of incredible hardship and opposition.
And it wasn't just about buses, was it?
No, not at all.
The boycott really became a symbol of resistance against the entire system of Jim Crow segregation.
Right. It sparked a wave of activism across the South.
Yeah.
And helped to ignite the broader civil rights movement.
Yeah.
Think about the sit-ins,
Right.
the freedom rides, the voter registration drives. They all drew inspiration and momentum from the success of the Montgomery Bus Boycott.
So it's not just a story about buses.
No.
It's a story about the power of ordinary people to create extraordinary change.
It is, and it's a story that continues to resonate today.
Right.
As we face new challenges, new injustices, new forms of oppression, it's important to remember the lessons of the Montgomery Bus Boycott.
What are some of those key lessons? What stands out to you?
Well, first, the power of unity.
Yeah.
When people come together, pool their resources, support each other, they can achieve incredible things.
Absolutely. And second,
the importance of strategic nonviolent resistance. The boycotters didn't resort to violence even when provoked.
Yeah.
They understood that meeting hate with hate would only escalate the situation.
Right.
Instead, they used peaceful protests, economic pressure, and legal challenges to dismantle the system of segregation.
And third, the need for persistence.
Right.
I mean, the boycott lasted for over a year.
It did over a year.
They faced setbacks, they endured hardships.
It did.
But they never gave up.
Never gave up.
Their commitment to justice was unwavering.
That's such a crucial point.
Yes.
Change rarely happens overnight.
Right.
It requires sustained effort, strategic planning, and a willingness to stay the course even when things get tough.
Think about it. 381 days of walking, carpooling, organizing alternative transportation.
Yeah.
Can you imagine the dedication it took to keep that boycott going for so long?
It's really mind-boggling, isn't it? And remember, they were doing all of this while facing threats, harassment, and violence from white supremacist groups.
It really makes you appreciate the sacrifices they made.
It does.
And the risks they took to fight for equality.
And their story reminds us that we all have a role to play in the fight for justice.
We do.
Yeah, it doesn't always require these grand gestures or heroic feats.
Okay.
Sometimes it's about the everyday acts of resistance,
right.
The small choices we make, the willingness to speak up against injustice, the commitment to building a more equitable world.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into the Montgomery Bus Boycott,
right.
I want to leave you with this thought.
Okay.
What will your contribution be?
That's a good question.
How will you carry the torch of justice forward?
Yeah.
The fight for equality is an ongoing journey.
It is.
And we all have a part to play.
We do.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
My pleasure.
We hope you've learned something new.
Yeah.
Gained a fresh perspective. And been inspired by the courage and resilience of those who came before us.
Absolutely.
And remember,
yeah,
history is happening all around us.
It is.
What role will you play in shaping the story?
It's up to all of us.
Thanks for listening to Mr. Hutchings History. Keep exploring, and we'll see you next time.